Hello and welcome to another episode of Leaders of Transformation. Today we're going to talk with Dr. Erik Won, who is the President of Wave Neuroscience, Inc., which is a biotechnology company that has innovated breakthrough technologies. One of them is the magnetic E-resonance therapy and synchronized transcranial magnetic stimulation. He actually joined Wave Neuroscience after serving as the chief physician and chief technology officer for Boeing. He also served as a U.S. Navy flight surgeon in the late 90s and the early 2000s. And we're just really excited to have him here today. Welcome to Leaders Transformation, Dr. Won.
Thank you. Really honored to be here. Thank you for hosting me.
My pleasure. And thank you to Luc Dupron for making the introduction, for Sean Bartlett, who is Wave Neuroscience's PR guy, and he holds many other hats as well. He's very talented, and I always like to acknowledge the people that make this happen behind the scenes. And so we appreciate them. And we also appreciate you as the listener being here, because this is why we do this. We do this because I love talking to really interesting people who are creating transformation in the world. But we record it so we can share it with you, so that you can learn how to not only improve your own life, be able to transform your own life, but also to be able to inspire you to become the difference maker and the world changer that I believe that every single person is capable of being. So you may not be a physician, you may not be able to do some of the things that we're going to talk about here today and develop that. You don't need to, because Dr. Won and his team are doing that. But you have something that is unique to you. You have value that you can bring to the marketplace and to the world at large. And so I hope this inspires you and encourages you that you can do that as well in your own unique way. So with that, let's talk about and dive into the conversation here with Dr. Won. Dr. Won, can you just kind of give us a brain science, right? I mean, this is a specific area of medicine that you've chosen. What got you interested in it? What was kind of the journey that led you to focus in on this particular area?
Yeah, it's a great question, because it wasn't really the area I set out to study in my medical career. But I guess I have to rewind back to 2003. In my past life as a flight surgeon, the Marine Corps unit that I served with, HMM 268 and the 11th Marine Expeditionary Unit, we had a fairly horrible accident where one of our helicopters went down during a mission. And as a residue of that, I had quite a large number of friends who were struggling with post-traumatic stress, traumatic brain injuries, kind of the signature injuries of the more recent conflicts. And so for the next 10 to 15 years, a lot of my life and my work was dedicated towards helping my brothers and sisters who were struggling, even as I finished up my medical training and was working sort of in a variety of different clinical and leadership positions. And so fast forward about a decade in, I was one of the chief physicians at the Boeing company. We build airplanes, but we have a medical team as well, helping people who are injured on the job. And I took on a secondary role as the chief technology officer for health services, and kind of stumbled upon this technology by accident. And so much of what we were trying, while helpful, wasn't really yielding the kind of results that we were hoping for. And when I heard about this kind of innovation in our backyard in Southern California, I went to visit and really found the technology compelling and potentially an inflection point in the way we treated not just traumatic brain injury and post-traumatic stress, but just cognitive health and wellness in general. And I'll take a deeper dive into that in a moment. But in terms of how I ended up here, I was for a couple of years just doing diligence and kind of endorsing the technology, poking at it, trying to see how much it could help. And as circumstances would have it, I had a very close friend who was really struggling with traumatic brain injury and symptoms of concussion. And I sent him into the center, and he had such a profound change. It really kind of caught me off guard. And then we started gathering more data and really gaining momentum. And that was sort of the point where I started contemplating whether to join or not. And there was a Navy SEAL Master Chief who kind of challenged me. And I think in the veteran world, a lot of what we do is for mission and for purpose. And it was sort of a, what do you stand for kind of conversation. And if we had even a 1% chance of eradicating disease or helping out this community that was struggling, we should enter that space and do everything we can to push the technology forward. And so that was ultimately sort of the confluence of influences and conversations that led me to join the team. And it's been about 5 years, and just really honored to be part of the organization.
Well, and thank you for sharing that. I love hearing the stories because there's always a why behind, people that make a big impact in the world, companies that make a big impact in the world. There's always the why. There's something from a heart-centered place that draws us to do this thing over that thing. And I think that's important context for understanding why you do what you do, not just because it's great technology, but what it can do for people, and what it can do even for your own friends and your desire to help them. Now, I know that this technology is quite developed. There's also clinical trials that are being done. I didn't read your whole bio, but it speaks to that. Can you talk about where this technology is at currently in terms of its development and, reliability, if you will, from that standpoint?
Sure. And before I go too far, I should pause for a moment and acknowledge kind of the amazing team that we have here. And in any kind of high-functioning, high-performing team, I really feel like we're blessed to have a group of leaders. And so just a few of the people that deserve recognition: Fred Walk and Ned Mason, Bill Phillips, Bob Eisenhart, Alex Ring, Julie Kim. We have an amazing team of scientists, engineers, and that's technological development and R&D has made my job a lot easier. But this is very much, I think, an organization culture that's built on collective intelligence, and I don't want to go too far along without acknowledging that this is really, I think, a culture and organization rather than just one or two people. So just wanted to put that out there. And as far as the technology goes, we're at the commercialization stage. We do have clinical trials ongoing, and what we've done is taken a base technology called transcranial magnetic stimulation. It's been FDA approved for depression, and we've developed algorithms and methods to personalize it to each individual. And so we're now entering an era, I think, of precision-guided, personalized medicine that we can scale to the masses. So we're trying to improve the accessibility and reach of the technology to help as many people as possible. And the way we've done that, and I think you were kind enough to give us some time and get an EEG, but that's really the first step in our process, is to capture an electrophysiologic picture of the brain called an electroencephalogram. And so much in the same way an EKG is an electrophysiologic picture of the heart, the EEG is an electrophysiologic picture of the brain. And we take that data and we run it through a normative database and some computational analytics, and we identify areas of the brain that maybe could use a little help or be a bit more optimized. And then we use this technology, transcranial magnetic stimulation, to tune up those areas. And the first time I heard it, it seemed a bit daunting, and I wasn't sure what to make of it. But over time, as I started pouring into the data and looking at the clinical outcomes, it started to become quite exciting. And so much of the current space in mental health, behavioral health, relies on, I think, a strong relationship between the clinician and the patient. But now we're adding to that discussion, I think, an objective study in the EEG where patients and individuals can kind of get this unique glimpse into how things are functioning and where we might strive to improve that function.
So I did go and do one of these EEGs, and for our listeners, you can see my selfie with this thing on my head, getting it done on social. But it was really fascinating to see the results of it in how my brain functioned from back to front and the brain waves and all of that. And as we talked about prior to starting this recording, is that yeah, it was slightly off, which I'm not surprised about it. I'm slightly off, but I would have some of my friends would agree she's slightly off. But in all seriousness, there was a slight variance, if you will. And I was just curious, actually, have you ever seen a scan? And maybe those aren't the people that come to get scans, but have you ever seen a scan where there is no, like, it's like ideal, it's perfect? In that way of just, there's nothing to do, no improvement?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I think the reality, and there may be a subsection of the audience that's disappointed to hear this, but there's really no perfect brain. Even folks who have great coherence, meaning the back to front communication is really well aligned. Those individuals, while they may be hyper efficient in certain domains, may also be more prone to depression. And so I think true to sort of our life experience, what is in many cases your greatest strength can also be a bit of a downfall. And just to use an example, those folks who have, fantastic coherence, they tend to be fairly quantitative and analytical, but may struggle a bit with, connection and emotional intelligence. And so, with all these brain images, there are very unique characteristics. And we like to say that it's similar to a signature. There are very unique qualities people have that make them who they are. And our role is, it's not right or wrong. It's just, can we tune something up to make people the best version of themselves? And that's the part that's been really interesting is, we sort of set out to, this technology was engineered to optimize brain function. It wasn't really dedicated towards a specific diagnosis. And so we frequently like to say that we're agnostic to diagnosis. We're just identifying areas of the brain that could use a little help. And I think just about everyone has those areas, and just over time and aging, whether it's due to a head injury, which many of us have had, whether it's through recreational sports or a car accident, or chronic sleep deprivation. Many overachievers, tend to not protect their sleep as well as they could. We find areas of the brain, clusters of neurons that start to misfire. And all we're doing is nudging them in the right direction and trying to get them to fire more coherently and efficiently. So yeah, it's we're not looking for the perfect brain necessarily, but we're trying to get people to the most perfect version of themselves that we can tune to.
Well, and I love that, and I think that's actually encouraging because, and that's what made me think of it, is it's encouraging to know that there's no perfect brain, like you said. So all of us are going to be unique and just like our signatures. And so it's actually encouraging that there's nothing quote unquote wrong with us, or like, ooh, you missed it on this one, you didn't get the goods, or, your brain doesn't work a certain way and too bad for you. But here is an opportunity to be able to improve and to dial it in and to be the best. And that's what I'm really committed to, is for people to be the best version of themselves. And so that's why I get excited about hearing that you can help them do that from a neurological perspective. And so very, very cool. Now, you alluded to a little bit of the ways that our brain disorders can occur. You mentioned a couple of them there. Maybe unpack that a little bit more in terms of the types of things that cause negative impact to our brain and our cognition. You mentioned sleep, deprivation. I know one of the things that Sean spoke about, and one of his colleagues, when I met them at the office there, is talking about even the way the brain cools itself, and sort of speak to what goes on in the brain and how people like that are listening can start to recognize the things that they do that are actually having a negative impact on their brain and the result of that. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it's a great question. And, I think that this is a space where it's very dynamic and very fast paced, and we're always learning more about, brain function, how neurons can get injured, and how we might strive to improve neuroplasticity and the recovery of neuronal function. And so probably the most common and well-publicized way that we see some of this neuronal misfiring or oscillatory dysfunction is a traumatic brain injury. And just to clarify the terminology, a traumatic brain injury refers to the mechanism of injury, and it comes in a variety of forms. Certainly people have been talking about football, but it can be, car accidents, soccer players who have head-on collisions and falling off a ladder. And then concussion refers to the residual symptoms people can have after a period of recovery. And the more common term is persistent post-concussion syndrome, or PPCS. And so this is one of the areas that we're researching currently, and I think is sort of got the nation's attention at the moment. But there's many other ways that brain injury can happen, many that we don't really think about. And even just, behavioral activities such as sleep deprivation. And I just finished this book by a brilliant researcher, Matthew Walker, called Why We Sleep. And one of the quotes that really stuck with me is, we're the only species in nature that voluntarily deprives itself of sleep, to our own detriment. And so many overachievers will burn the midnight oil and try to get to that last email. But that causes a cascade of problems and long-range negative health outcomes, everything from weight gain, obesity, insulin resistance, heart disease, stroke, all from this loss of foundational sleep. And so if there's one message I'd like to promote to the audience is really do what you can to protect your sleep. Emotional trauma can certainly cause a certain amount of brain dysfunction. And it's interesting now that we're entering an era where we can visualize some of these things. And so loss of a loved one, a child, these combat injuries where, there's sudden loss of life of somebody that you were very close to. You can literally see these emotional scars in the brain imaging now. And so that's an interesting area of research. Chemical trauma, whether it's through years of hard drinking, certain types of drugs can cause patterns, disruptions in waveform patterns that we weren't really aware of until 5 or 6 years ago. And so it's exciting to be able to see these changes and to be on sort of the front end of gaining an understanding, or trying to gain an understanding of these issues. But at the same time, perhaps a bit frightening. You start to appreciate how fragile our life is, and our cognitive function can be. So yeah, it's a constantly evolving field, and excited to see what the future holds.
So who is it that you like that you work with right now? I know that you mentioned about PTSD. You have a lot of people that come to you, I think, with PTSD, but you also work with, my understanding, and clarify that if I'm incorrect on that, but looking at your website and some of the material and talking to some of your colleagues, was that you work with people that have autism. You work with some, you said depression, anxiety, but there's also this other, you mentioned about, to me, about the discoveries of even people that are looking to up-level their performance and this transformation that's going on in your company. Can you speak to sort of the demographic of who comes to you and maybe even where that's going and evolving?
Yeah, it's a great question, and this is sort of, I guess, true to life is we're always evolving, and even our organization, and I would say the industry is undergoing a bit of transformation, and we always have to be adaptive and listen to what the market is telling us. And so the technology was really innovated to be a neuro optimization technology, and you know. At a biological level, our neurons don't really care what you label them. You can call it post-traumatic stress, you can call it concussion. In some instances, it can be autism. If you're allowing, the engine of the brain to work more efficiently, we're seeing some promising results across a number of different dimensions. And so I have to be careful. I don't want to misrepresent the technology, and I'm certainly not trying to sell or anything like that. But I do think a greater understanding of the science and how to better care for ourselves is really important. And so outside of this technology, even I think that we've learned a lot in the last decade about how we might care for ourselves, whether it's protecting our sleep, mindfulness, meditation, proper nutrition, proper exercise, connectedness. All of these things are really important parts of our overall wellness and health. But as we sort of venture down the road of doing confirmatory research and clinical trials with best-in-class partners, and so we've been working with the USC Center for Neurorestoration and U.S. Special Operations Command, Uniformed Services University, and during these the research process, sometimes you realize there are other areas that you might be able to help. And we had quite a few patients, whether they were elite athletes, special operators, some executives would come back to us and tell us that they were experiencing benefits such as improved cognitive processing speed or executive function. They're connecting dots that they weren't able to connect before. Many people report the ability to process more information more rapidly. And so we set out to study some of these things, and we most recently entered a collaboration with the Special Operation Care Fund and the Tomahawk Charitable Foundation to run some veterans through, and we did a study called the Brain Check, which is a tablet-based neurocognitive assessment. And this measures everything from executive function to short-term recall and cognitive processing speed, visual spatial orientation. And we were surprised by the results that we were seeing, sometimes 20 to 30% improvement in just a few weeks. And so I recall one of my earlier conversations with a two-star general who said, I love what you're doing for our guys, but is there a possibility we could prehabilitate individuals and help them to perform better? And at the time, of course, this is by itself, I think, a very provocative question. And we sort of set out to examine that and explore it. And our group of scientists and engineers felt that if an elite athlete or operator, let's say, starts out at 100%, and over time and just exposure to blasts and the kinetics of the battlefield, they may diminish to 60 or 70% of where they started. We thought we could bump them back up to that 90% range if we're lucky, maybe closer to 100%. And so we started working in this human performance arena. And so we were seeing some of these pretty exciting changes. And so it sort of causes your organization to pivot a little bit and to look at this in some different ways. And now, some of our more common clienteles and users have been executives who are looking for more of an edge, or athletes, everyone's looking for a 2 or 3% competitive advantage. And if we can bump them up just a bit more than that, that's always of interest. And just to share one more anecdote, there is a metric, a biometric called heart rate variability that wasn't really on my radar. It's not something that's commonly used in medical parlance, but in the human performance realm, it's an area of very intense research. And it is a measurement that's a proxy for autonomic tone. So the higher your HRV, the better it is. And elite athletes can have a number upwards of 50, and your average office worker, who I'm thinking of myself, who might be more sedentary than they should be, might have an HRV in the 20 to 30 range. But we started getting these wearable bands. It's called a Whoop. And it doesn't have to be this. There's Aura rings that have become very popular. But we got these and started giving them to patients to measure their sleep, because many of our patients reported improved quality of sleep. And we're pretty excited. We did see improvements in the amount of stage 3, stage 4 sleep, deep sleep people were getting. But we got a call from one of the people at Whoop asking us what we were doing, kind of an unsolicited call. And the reason was they were seeing significant changes in HRV. And that was a pleasant surprise. It's not something we set out really to explore, but now that we've kind of incidentally found that, we've started tracking that a bit more diligently, and we're seeing on a fairly consistent, reproducible level that there are improvements in HRV. And so we're just, I think, on the first steps down that road of being intentional and scientific and academically rigorous about how we're measuring those changes. But it's an exciting area to explore, and we're starting to innovate kind of new products for the consumer rather than going strictly down medical. We're trying to make these more portable and increase accessibility to the technology.
Well, and that actually brings up a good point. I had somebody who said, "Oh, I think I've heard of this technology. I think years ago I was in Orange County, or somewhere in there, that he had explored it, but it was kind of inaccessible at that time." And you're talking about now having it be more accessible. How do people find out about this? I mean, obviously they find out about it through podcasts like this, but how do they schedule a session? What happens in a typical session? The process, like I went and I had the scan, and then you have the assessment and go on from there. And I know you also have it's like an ongoing process that you're leading people through. So can you give us a taste of or a sense of how people actually access that right now? What are the ways, and obviously you're developing new ways, and what they can expect?
Yeah, well, I think the biggest news from an accessibility standpoint is that this is now covered by most insurances. And so that's very exciting. As far as the typical process, yeah, a lot of the, I guess, limitation in terms of this being well known is just that it's new. And I think, in terms of adoption, particularly as it relates to the medical community, we're slow adopters. And so I think that this is gradually becoming better known, and we're certainly seeing a significant spike in referrals in the COVID era and whatnot. But the experience is very benign. This is not, we've had questions in the past of, is this like, electrical shock therapy, electroconvulsive therapy? And it's nothing remotely like that. It's not a high wattage, high voltage type experience. For us, the first day is just getting an EEG. It's a painless study to get. You wear something that looks like a cap, and 15 minutes later, we're able to acquire a brain image. It just takes a little while, a few minutes to develop an algorithm, and then we can roll right into treatment. And most people will choose to get treatment the following day. And there's a visit with the doctor, and the treatment is 30 minutes of stimulation, and it entails 6 seconds of gentle pulses. There's a 1.5 to 2 Tesla MRI grade coil that delivers a pulse through a coil. And you just sit in a chair and relax. You close your eyes, and there's 6 seconds of pulses, 54 seconds of rest, and then another 6 seconds of pulses and 54 seconds of rest. And we do that for 30 cycles, and then we're done. And I've heard it described as, some people have called it a brain massage. Others have said it's kind of like a hummingbird tapping your forehead. But it's, in most cases, a fairly painless experience. A lot of people enjoy it. And so we usually do that for a number of weeks, depending on the severity of symptoms people are experiencing. And usually within the first week, people will start to notice some benefit. And then we like to see some consistency. So we'll get EEGs every couple of weeks to make sure that there's progress. And when we see a few EEGs that are looking good, there will come a point where the patient feels like they've gotten tangible benefit, and we'll coach them on certain behaviors like getting good sleep, getting blue light in the morning. This is one of the circadian rhythm techniques to ensure that you get good quality of sleep. And but that's a typical day. It's just a 30-minute session. And we talked about improving accessibility. In the past, cost was a bit of an issue. Time commitment, 30 minutes a day doesn't sound like much, but it's not easy when you incorporate a drive and commute through traffic. And so we've set about trying to develop a portable home use unit. And we're working through a lot of that at the moment, but we're hoping within the next 6 months to a year to deploy a unit that could be done from the comfort of your home. And that's, I think, keeping in mind, all the individuals who may not be experiencing enough symptoms to go and seek help from a doctor, but may just want a little bit of a boost. They want to perform better, be more productive during the day. That's kind of the target audience we have in mind for this next iteration of the technology.
Well, and if they're having it at home, there's also accountability in terms of actually using it for them to get the results too, right? So, I mean, if they show up and you know that they're actually doing the treatment, then you can see a more likely, you can see the results and the improvement because of the work that they're actually doing. If it's at home, I can just imagine people going, "Oh, I forgot to do that today," unless there's enough of a need. So then, of course, you have to work that in as well. So yeah, I love the idea though that you're making it more accessible and portable so that people can use it. I mean, I work with a lot of entrepreneurs, business leaders. They are looking for that increased performance. And yes, sometimes it's like they may be have experienced trauma, like myself. I've experienced certain trauma. I've had family members that have had multiple concussions and so forth. So there may be that rehabilitation, if you will, and then to optimize beyond that. But to be able, there's a lot of leaders and entrepreneurs that would love to get more. What are we talking about all the time, right? Get more out of your day, get more, impact out of the work that you do. Mm-hmm. And so I can see there's huge potential in that, as well as helping those that are struggling with symptoms that are actually negatively impacting their quality of life in a significant way. So yeah, it's really, really great. So do you have a kind of a sense of the timeline in terms of that home unit and when that could be available?
Yeah, we're hoping to have something, and we've got a kind of a beta product that we're putting through the paces at the moment. And so this was a synchronized transcranial magnetic stimulation technology, sTMS, that we're running some clinical trials through. And we've realized that this is really an opportunity to help people in a transformative and disruptive way. And ultimately, I think that's what the goal should be, is we're looking at, I think, cognitive function and brain health in a very different way, and hopefully destigmatizing a lot of the dialogue. And there shouldn't be a stigma, just to be totally clear, but many people are reticent to go and see a doctor and say, you know, I'm feeling some depression or I'm having some anxiety. And although we can sit here and say people shouldn't feel that way, for better or worse, there may be some hesitation to go down that road. And so if we can now reframe the discussion and just you know, whether it's through brain imaging and seeing that a cluster of neurons may not be working as well as they could, or, you know, just wanting to perform better than you are in your current state, you know, I think that we can avoid a lot of the stigma that may surround these conditions, because ultimately all we want is to help people, right? If the goal is to allow people to achieve the best versions of themselves, to perform better, most people aren't going to say, no, I don't want to perform better. You know, I'm content the way I am. I think we can all, you know, all of us are looking for, whether it's just improving 1% a day or being a better father or mother or professional. You know, I think hopefully all of us are looking to learn and to improve ourselves, and you know, to have the capability now of being able to augment that and have a tool in the arsenal to help people along that road. For us, is pretty exciting. And you know, our goal is to not just, you know, disrupt industry for the sake of disrupting industry, but when you think about what we might do, not just on the individual and family level, but in a population level and community level, if you can help somebody's productivity even 5% or 10%, improve emotional resilience, so that when a problem arises, we don't, you know, kind of get knocked off our path and lose our way. You know, there's so many benefits to this that lend themselves to, you know, trying to get this to as many people as possible. I think we have to, I think internally we feel a sense of moral duty to try to get this to as many people as possible and to make sure it's as safe and effective as we can. And so that's everyday kind of hair on fire. The nobility of the mission, I think, resonates within all of our you know, all of our employees, and we're excited to bring that to market. And so, you know, 6 months to a year, I think, is our goal, and hopefully we can get it a bit faster. I'll certainly be in touch with you when we have something ready to roll.
Awesome. Well, Dr. Won, this has been fascinating, really fascinating. And yeah, my brain goes to the potential of this and what this can mean for us as a society at large when we start to optimize. Right now, we hear a lot of record cases of anxiety and depression and overwhelm and all of this. And there's so much external stimuli that is weighting people down and overriding or overwhelming their brains to try to process all of this technology so fast. You know, things are changing and evolving so quickly. We need to learn faster. And so to be able to have something that can help with that, as well as with those that are struggling with things that have happened, like as a result of a car accident, or, you know, some trauma that they've experienced, physical trauma that they've experienced. It's just incredible. It's just really incredible. So I'm excited for what you are doing. I'm looking forward to hearing as it develops, and being able to continue to promote it and share it and help others to find out about it, those that need it. And so we'll make sure all the links are in the show notes, of course, to your website and to social, where they can find out more. But it's waveneuro.com for those of you that are listening or watching the video. That's where you can go and you can find out more. And I know you have two websites, actually. You have waveneuro.com, and then, of course, you have the Brain Treatment Center. So just explain those two. So if they go there and they are wondering why there's two different
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we have primarily one website, which is waveneuro.com. But for physicians and providers who are using our technology, they have a separate website called braintreatmentcenter.com, which will give you a list of locations. There is a regulatory paradigm called the corporate practice of medicine, whereby physicians, rightly so, should not be encumbered by profit. They always need to do what's best for the patient. And so they need to be separated, kind of like church and state, from a technology company. And so Wave Neuroscience is the company that holds the intellectual property and the technology. And then physicians run the brain treatment centers. And so that's why there's sort of two different websites where people can find information.
So if somebody actually said, I have experienced some kind of trauma, I would like to get support, they could go to you directly, or there could be doctors that are using your technology, using in the clinic, using your technology in their clinics, where they can get access, and you can give them a list of, where they are and the closest one to them, kind of thing. So that's on the braintreatmentcenter.com website.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, Dr. Won, thank you so much. Thank you for what you're doing. Thank you for taking a few minutes out of your time, your day today, to share with us and to explain a little bit more of the technology. I just really appreciate you.
Oh, thank you. I truly appreciated the time. This was a lot of fun.
Awesome. Thank you. Well, we want to make it fun for our guests to be able to share what they're passionate about. And I just find it's fascinating. Of course, there's a whole rabbit trail we could go down in here. And there's so many questions that I didn't get to, but I think that the best thing to do for our listeners that are maybe wanting more information and they're saying, what about this? What about that? Is to go to waveneuro.com and get your questions answered there. If you are curious about how this can actually help you, is to schedule an EEG, schedule a session, and start to see where there's potential for you to make improvements in the quality of your life, the quality of your brain function and performance. And so I encourage you to do that. We appreciate you listening. We appreciate you watching, and we look forward to your comments. I'd love to hear how this has impacted you. If there are ahas that have come out of this, we'd love to hear from you. You can go on leadersoftransformation.com. You can, of course, find us on social as well, and let us know what you think about this. And, and if there's anything we can do where you need us to make connections to Dr. Won and his team, let us know that. We can do that. We want to be able to support you along your journey as well. So thank you so much. I appreciate you. Again, Dr. Won, thank you to our listeners, and we look forward to seeing you in the next episode of Leaders of Transformation real soon.